The following deals with mental health issues, including suicide, that may be triggering for some. If you are in crisis, you can call or text 988 anywhere in Canada or the United States to speak with a counselor. Hi there, thanks for joining me. I'm Kevin Frankish. This is the Mental Health Podcast. We speak often of the mental health crisis in our youth. It is at unprecedented levels. Jonathan Haidt, author of The Anxious Generation, says that our young generation is the least flourishing generation that we know of. Well, as the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What about the parents? What state are our parents in right now? A study done out of Trent University looked at Peterborough, Ontario, a city of 83,000 people in eastern Ontario. What they found were parents who were stressed beyond belief. Some said they had trouble just hanging on some days. The study found 46% of those asked said in the last 2 weeks they always or often felt stressed. What is parenting like in 2026? And what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our kids? One of the authors of the study, Professor Naomi Nichols, joins me. She is the Canada Research Chair in Community Partnered Social Justice. Parents and Kids, the Stress Ripple, right now on the Mental Health Podcast. Hi, Professor. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
This is a timely study. It's an interesting study, and we're going to get more into it. But the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that even though this study is about parents, it really goes a long way to explain how we are seeing our younger generation growing up in a mental health crisis, right?
Absolutely. We know a lot more than we used to know about the intergenerational transmission, is maybe not the right word to use, but transmission of mental illness, of other types of illness. And so if we want to understand the rise in mental health symptoms among young people in our communities, we have to look at what's happening at home. And this isn't a invitation to blame parents. I'm a parent myself. But the truth is that one of the most influential determinants of our health, mental and physical, is our environment and our relationships. And so for children, one of the most important or central relationships is the one they have with their caregivers. And when that relationship is under stress, or when the people with whom they are in relationship, when they're not doing well, then young people's mental health will also suffer.
Isn't that the truth, right? Because home is supposed to be the safe place. Home is where you should be the most comfortable, and home is where you should get your support. But if we have parents who themselves are completely living on the edge of anxiety, it goes a long way to explain behavior problems we're having in schools, learning difficulties, and overall anxiety.
Yeah, I think parents are really feeling pressure. You can imagine there are not as many work opportunities in Peterborough as there are in some communities. So parents are commuting to Durham and other parts of the GTA for work, and they're coming home and racing to pick up kids after school from the after school care program, and then racing home to put some food on the table and get back out to hockey practice. And so even in the absence of clear mental health symptoms among parents, just that elevated stress of everyday life also makes it really hard for us to show up in the ways that our kids need. And that's to show up predictably, to show up calmly, to show up really stably and present for our children. You can even see it in the way that parents sometimes are coping with the challenges of daily life by scrolling on social media. And so that's one of the ways that I see people coping with pressure that gets in the way of their availability to their children or for their children.
Now, obviously, we're talking about Peterborough, Ontario, and this is where this study was done. But is it fair to say that we can take the results of this study and apply them to other centers across Canada that are in a similar situation, a loss of industry, a population that isn't big enough for all the necessary services and the like. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. So there are things about Peterborough that are shared in other mid-sized communities across the province of Ontario, particularly where industry has left, and there haven't been new, well-paid jobs sort of moving in for people. There's jobs in the service sector, but we know that those tend to be contract-based. They don't come with benefits or other kinds of labor protections, and they're poorly paid. And so, parents are facing particular types of economic pressures here. We also have a really tight housing market with we had one of the worst vacancy rates in the whole province of Ontario at 1% until just recently, when it's eased a bit towards 3%. But there are economic pressures in Peterborough that are distinct and are shared by other mid-sized communities that are in a post-industrial phase. The other thing, though, I'd want to observe is that we actually did this study in part because of research that was coming out in the United States. And I don't know if you remember, but the Surgeon General's headline was "Parenting is bad for your health." And so they were looking at the stresses that parents were navigating all across the US in relation to some of these economic pressures, but also just social pressures to be a perfect parent, to be more engaged in your child's life, to ensure your child is better prepared for what are historically precarious conditions in terms of climate change and shifting geopolitical context. So parents are working harder than ever to try to ensure that their kids have access to what they see as a good life. And it's taking a toll on parents, and it's taking a toll on kids. I'd also say, I think none of us have fully recovered from the pandemic and the closures that occurred then, the stresses to marriages and families, and the multiple hats, especially women were wearing when they were navigating a homeschooling environment and full-time work. Kids were isolated from their friends. Kids didn't develop the same kind of language skills because they were socially isolated. And so I think we're still catching up from some of those developmentally challenging circumstances associated with 2 years of uncertainty.
I think one of the takeaways I want people to leave our conversation with is you're not alone. There's so many times that mental health will put blinders on us, and we think we're the only ones stressed out. We think we're the only ones who end up yelling at our kids, and we think we're the only ones who the school is calling and saying, little Johnny or little Sally is misbehaving or needs to go see a doctor and get some meds into them. So this is unfortunately a problem that affects so many parents out there. So if you think you're the only one, you're not, right?
No, not at all. And I would say I have a personal interest in the study, having had my own experiences with burnout and not realizing that working harder wasn't going to serve me anymore and wasn't going to serve my kids. And I remember a key line from my therapist during this period is when I was a pre-tenure professor at McGill. You can't settle your children unless you can settle yourself. And so that was, and still is actually, like a guiding mantra in this study, that in order for parents to have the emotional and physical resources required to parent in the ways our kids need, we need to make sure they can first settle themselves. They can take care of their own needs for rest, their own needs for food, their own capacity just to shut their eyes for a minute and turn off what one parent described as the ticker tape of things that are still left to do in every single day. And if parents have their own mental health needs taken care of, then they're much more available to show up and be a consistent presence in their child's lives.
So that left you with some choices to make, obviously.
The burnout?
Yeah, so it made you, because obviously you're burnt out because you're trying to get all that work in. You're trying to meet your car payments, your mortgage payments, making sure your kids have everything they need and then some. Mm-hmm. And I think that is facing so many parents now is, I don't know if I can make the choice to stop. I don't think I can stop. I don't think I can get off this merry-go-round.
Right. And that definitely was what I was feeling, and certainly was the message that I brought to my doctor when my doctor said, "Oh, actually, I think that you're not doing very well." I was like, well, I don't really have time to not be doing very well. And also I'm killing it at work. I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
I'm going to get early tenure, and you have no idea. And actually I had no idea. And so, yeah, it was challenging. One of the things that my therapist actually worked with me to understand was that, if I was diagnosed tomorrow with breast cancer, I would have to take time off work and people would figure it out. And it seems like an extreme analogy, but it was really helpful for me in thinking that there are circumstances when you have to step out, and the institutions that you work in and the people that you work with will carry on without you. And in this case, I was also doing a lot of participatory research with young people who were formerly homeless, and many of them were struggling with their own mental health concerns. They were in and out of treatment, struggling in active addiction, struggling with ongoing precarious housing. And so when I went on paid sick leave, we all did. And it was really illuminating of just how important it is to put health first, and to be able to, take a step out for a little bit and just rest. So it's not like there's no magical treatment in this case. It is actually just finding time to rest, letting your brain calm down, your nervous system reset. I mean, this is what we now know to be at the root of intergenerational transmission of mental illness and other diseases, is that the nervous system gets dysregulated. And so the intervention is to reset your nervous system. And that actually isn't terribly difficult to do. Comes with rest, comes with time outside.
What did you just say there? Transmission of mental illness.
Intergenerational.
That is a fascinating statement. And you know what? I don't think that's a statement anybody would have made 20 or 30 years ago. You can't transmit mental illness. Mental illness isn't contagious, but it is.
Yeah, pretty scary actually now. Even in utero, the mother's endocrine function, the endocrine function, the nervous system, and the immune system, the way those three systems work together transmits across the uterus. And so it transmits stress hormones and other, it's largely stress hormones across the uterus that can impact how the child's brain is developing. And so even before an infant is born, our environments and the stress that we are navigating is already having an impact on how our children's brains will develop. It's something I think about a lot, because at that point I was commuting from Peterborough to Toronto with my second kid, both of them actually. With my first, I was doing my PhD. With my second, I was working at Sick Kids. And so you'd think this should be a health promoting work environment, but it was a contract. I had no sick leave. I was commuting on the Greyhound bus every day. And I think that probably my endocrinological response was not healthy for a developing fetus.
We always think about moms always think about what they're eating. Right. Don't smoke, don't drink, because it goes right to the baby. And we have to be aware. So does our anxiety and our stress levels go there as well. I mean, people read to their child while they're in the womb. They sing and literally interact with their child in the womb. Which has positive benefits when they're singing and reading stories and that. But that blows my mind, thinking about the intergenerational transmission of mental illness. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's in the realm of epigenetics, and some of the mechanisms are still being solidified in the science, but it's now quite clear that exposure to stress in utero, but then also in the first 5 years of life, especially chronic stress or acute stress, can actually change how our genes express themselves. And so it is implicated in phenotypic variation, or the different gene environment interactions that we are living every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're just setting ourselves up for a whole bunch of hurt, it seems,
Yeah.
these days.
Well, but the good news is that we are plastic is the word that is used often to describe our brains and our bodies, like how our bodies respond to the environments that we're in. And so there are, as I said, like things that we can do to make sure that we are helping our children reset their nervous system, that we are first resetting our own nervous systems, that we're working really hard to create environments for ourselves and for our children that are simply calm, predictable, where we have people in our lives we can count on. So we have nurturing, stable relationships. We need those as adults. Our children need them from us primarily, but also from their teachers, from their coaches, from their grandparents. And so, as a society, it actually wouldn't be that hard to prioritize all of these things. It's just that we have instead prioritized the opposite, like competition, individualism, profit at all costs, rather than ensuring everyone has just enough to make sure that they're not stressed all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, basically, we have no time for leisure, for connection. It's work, work, work. A lot of parents have two jobs. It's thinking about the bills. It is bringing your child to dance lessons, then picking them up from there and bringing them to hockey and taking them from there to another kid's birthday party. But they have to leave there soon because they have a second birthday party to do that day. It is busy.
Yeah, and it's not good for us. It's not good for any of us. And so it would be totally unfair of me to say, like, just do less. I remember my own father said that to me when I was parenting young kids in Montreal, and we had no grandparents to help us and really were on our own. And I found that response to be insensitive, but it is true. And I think there's a role for government to play to ensure that there aren't parents who are working two jobs, that incomes are sufficient, that you can afford to house yourselves and feed your children, and that we aren't creating or like doubling down on this hyper individualistic society, like that kids can go to post-secondary education, that the tuition won't sink you, that, there are opportunities that are scaffolded for young people to participate in college programs and engage in the trades. Like, we're not actually investing in public education. At the very least, we haven't made it easy for the province of Ontario to roll out the universal childcare program. The waitlists are longer than they've ever been. Like, we don't really have a provincial government that has put families' needs and families' health on the table at all. And so if we did that, I think some of those other pieces would fall more easily into place.
And then on top of all that, we're putting our kids into these care programs, and we're going to work just to pay to put our kids into these care programs.
Totally, absolutely. And if you don't do that, though, as a woman, it's usually women who stay home. You have trouble re-entering the labor market because the labor market conditions remain really tight. And especially once you step out, if you have any connection to a technology, that technology will have advanced in the 5 years you're out of the labor market. I know parents really talked quite openly with us in the research about how that decision about whether to and how to access childcare, whether it made sense financially or not, was really difficult for them.
I want to get into the study and the results and what parents told you, and more importantly, what we can do about it. But let's sort of set the stage here, because what we are producing is a generation. Now, Jonathan Haidt, who is the author of The Anxious Generation, is a social psychologist. He calls this generation not only the anxious generation, but the least flourishing generation that we know of. 40%, he says, of Gen Z feel stressed or anxious all the time. 40% stressed, anxious all the time. And now they're facing, well, I don't even know if I can get a job when I get out of college or university. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to own a home. I don't know even if I can afford a car. In fact, a lot of Gen Z and Gen X are giving up their licenses because I can't afford a car. And so we have to look what tree that apple came from. And there are the parents. There are the parents that you spoke with.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting that you named that statistic. 40% of young people are feeling stressed or anxious all the time. Well, 51% of parents reported feeling stressed or overwhelmed either every day.
Wow, seems kind of similar, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I don't want to tell you your business, but I would say those two numbers are pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not surprising that young people are also feeling destabilized if they're growing up in homes where parents are also feeling destabilized. And one thing I like about Jonathan Haidt's work is the way he talks too about what it looks like for a community to let young people thrive. And it's that they're outside playing, that they're safe, roads are safe, parks are safe, and kids are running more freely, wilding, to use a trendy parenting word, more than they have been able to do in the last 10 years because of parental fear, which we heard a lot about. Parental fear of safety issues, parental fear of cars going too fast, parental fear of bad influences, but also because of some of the losses of social connection that young people experienced, again, during pandemic lockdown times that we're not so far away from now.
And we all know the dangers of smartphones and tablets, et cetera. And we know we should be saying to our kids, put that down. No, not right now. But parents are so exhausted that even if they told them to put down, the child will look at it and say, well, what do I do now? And we always feel that we have to be the cruise director all the time. I remember just kicking my kids outside. There's nothing to do. There's nothing. Then I couldn't get them to come in. Like they're always going to say that. So tell me what the overall, what are the mood of parents today? And it's a pretty wide ranging question, or a generalized question.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like a project that illuminated some real strengths in parenting as well as some real warning signs. So that one statistic, like 1 in 2 parents basically is always or often stressed and overwhelmed. That should alarm us because our body's natural stress response is designed to sort of cycle where normally you're not stressed. Normally you're calm. Periodically you have the resources to sort of move through a stress cycle, get into fight or flight mode, do the hard thing, and then you settle back down. But if parents are always stressed or overwhelmed, it's a sign that their nervous systems are dysregulated. And so that's the scary stuff that we heard about. But parents also were really clear that many of them had people they could count on in their lives to support them. They had people they could talk to, and that they felt that they were able to parent their children even when times were difficult. So it's a suggestion that they have parental resilience even under conditions of economic precarity and climate precarity and some of the other challenges that are facing our society right now. Parents still felt quite confident in their own skills as parents. That was primarily, though, the survey respondents. And in this study, we tended to hear more from survey respondents who were highly resourced parents. And in the focus groups, we deliberately sought to engage with organizations that serve parents who have been deemed to be at risk by institutions in our society, like Children's Aid, like healthcare providers, or who are new parents to Peterborough coming from outside of the health systems we operate here. And they feel less certain about their parenting resources and their capacities. If you're new, it's just sometimes hard to understand what are the norms here? How do I get support for my kids? And for parents who are experiencing intersecting systemic forms of exclusion, like really high rates of poverty, domestic or intimate partner violence, housing insecurity and those types of stressors, they reported much less confidence in their capacities as parents, much more uncertainty about decisions like returning to work after giving birth, much less certainty about where they were going to live, how they were going to feed their kids, what was going to happen next in their lives. And I think that is something we should be thinking about. The parents who are most economically on the edge of things, they're the ones who I'm worried about most right now.
Did you detect anger? Because I know that Peterborough especially tends to lean towards populist politicians and populist ideologies, and in that anger, we're seeing it go viral in the U.S. and I'm seeing it in that the Peterborough area. But did you detect anger from these parents?
Sometimes, like I can think of a few focus groups where people talked about feeling angry is the way it manifested. I think it's fear, but around homelessness in Peterborough, which has been left unaddressed, I think is the way it feels to people. And so there are people who are living in parks, there are needles in parks. I think people felt abandoned would be the word I would use by our local governments, that, things that would be actually quite simple to implement, like gates around parks so that kids could run and parents aren't afraid they're going to run out into traffic, like just little things like that aren't in place for parents to even just sit on a bench and close their eyes for a second. And so, I think it was less anger and more abandonment, feeling like I'm never going to own a home, right? I'm never going to be able to better myself or my children in the way that I had hoped, feeling less hopeful.
Do you think you'll do this study again? Because I would be interested to see if there is a change either way. Are things getting worse? Are things getting better?
Yeah, that's the idea, especially with these surveys, to be able to track some of these trends longitudinally, because I think it is really important, especially when we are hearing things like, I've been teaching for 30 years and I've never seen the kind of challenging student situations that I'm facing right now. And I hear that a lot. And so to have a clearer sense of what's going on in homes, what's going on in parents' lives, what's going on in our community that could explain some of these other social challenges that we're facing.
So what can we do? Answer that in 30 seconds or less.
We can.
No, you don't have to. I'm not. Okay. I don't want to. But give me the entire answer, because that's what we want to fix this. But It's not a simple process, is it? What do we need to do?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that should change are norms around what is expected or what parents are expecting of themselves. And so one way I would encourage parents to rethink how they see their responsibilities is that their first responsibility is with respect to their own self-care. It's that settle me first so I can settle my children. And that's not being indulgent or a bourgeoisie. Like, that's necessary for you to be able to show up and be the kind of parent that your child needs, which is just simply available, present, predictable. And so that's something that could change. I would say too, like norms from employers, that the idea that parents would stay past 5 o'clock is unrealistic to me, and that we wouldn't support opportunities to negotiate work from home periodically, or even shared work, someone who's towards the end of their career and wants to work part-time, and someone who's coming in the earlier phases of their career and has young children at home and wants to work part-time. Like, why we're not considering opportunities for them to job share seems silly to me. So some changes in workplaces around accommodating parents' lives. And then most of the other changes that I think we need to see are policy-related changes. So changes especially to our funding of education, and not just throwing money at it, but ensuring that teachers are treated as knowledgeable professionals that know what they're doing and can do what is right with and for children if they're supported by our provincial government to sort of like act on their own professional integrity and judgment. And so I would, suggest the provincial government steps out of education as much as possible. and allows the people who know what they're doing to actually do that work well. That's, early childhood all the way through the post-secondary sector. We need to fund those sectors better, but we also just need less government interference, because I don't think it's helping. I'm not surprised that they wouldn't release the last EQAO results, because I don't expect we're doing very well as a province. And I think that it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine that things are really not going very well. So that's another piece. Parents are really struggling to get access to primary healthcare. So we need to make sure that everyone, especially people raising young children, have access to primary physicians. There are developmentally sensitive screens that have to take place right away in developing children, and we aren't ensuring that parents get those. I think that we need to make sure that young people and families who are seeking mental health supports are congratulated for doing so and told to come on in, and not to get on a wait list where you might get access to care or treatment in the course of the next 5 years of your life. Like, needs to be immediate. And I would say the same for anyone who's struggling with substance dependence. Right away, if you show up and say, I'm interested in seeking some support, whether or not that's treatment, just I'm here. And we need to open arms, welcome people, and find a way to ensure that they have what they need to stay involved in the sort of provision of care that will help them do better.
How are you doing since you took care of yourself?
A lot better, like so much better. But it is.
And I'm not trying to pry. I just want people to know there's light at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah, well, and it's an ongoing challenge. Like, I actually, starting this summer, have been meditating every day, 10 minutes at least twice a day. And I have found it's like so basic, but that's made a huge difference. I still really struggle with getting kind of pulled in too many directions, but I'm much more clear-headed about the repercussions of me not putting my own health on the table as something that matters in terms of my children's well-being than I was when they were younger. And so it's helpful. It's helpful in ensuring that I take weekends off, right? I don't work on the weekends anymore, which I did when my kids were little, always. I don't work in the evenings unless I'm working out of the house, which again, I worked every night when my kids went to bed. And that's not sustainable. It's not healthy. And it shouldn't be the expectation that someone is paid to work 35 hours a week, but they're actually working 70 because they're on the tenure track at a pseudo Ivy League university. Like, that is not reasonable. It's not healthy. And we have to challenge that as a norm that we accept as a society.
Great advice. Absolutely fantastic advice. And I think you've touched on so many things that people need to pay attention about, because you really said it. You said this is the canary in the coal mine. Mm-hmm. And if we don't pay attention, there's no telling what the next generation will be suffering through, and so on and so on and so on. Do you think maybe our parents learned to be parents from their parents and their grandparents? In my generation, that started the gap started to widen between families. And then finally now we have parents who say, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Do you think maybe we need to teach parenting?
No, I don't think that's what is missing at all. It's not a knowledge gap. I think it's actually a support gap. Like, parents need more grandparents. They need more grandparents to show up with non-judgmental support. Like, let me hold the baby while you sleep. Let me vacuum your house so you can go outside to the park with your child. Here's some dinner. Do what you want. I'm going to go. Like, we need that kind of support from the generation who's just ahead of us. And I think, again, parents need to internalize the message, like, it's okay to rest. It's okay to do less. I don't think it's a knowledge gap. Like, parents are consuming more parenting knowledge than they have historically. It's actually cited, at least in the Surgeon General's report, as a source of stress, actually, for parents, because it feels like they know so much about what perfect parenting looks like, and it's so far from what they can actually achieve in their everyday life that they feel like, not only am I failing at work, not only am I failing to like be on the PTA for my kid's school, but I'm also failing every day as a parent. I can't do gentle parenting. I'm not always calm. And I mean, like that sense of falling behind, even in your own home, is exhausting.
This has been absolutely fascinating. We've only literally just scratched the surface of what's going on. But I think, like I said, I hope the takeaway is that people realize first that they're not alone. And second, there is an incredible importance to looking after your own mental health. And doing so, you're being a good parent. You're doing something that's right for your kids.
Yes, absolutely. Like, yes, I would say make time for meditation, make time for the yoga class or the basketball league or whatever thing brings you joy and allows your body actually to cycle through that stress response. Make time for therapy. Like, you might think that the challenge right now at home is your child. It may help everything else get better if you get into therapy. And I think parents are so quick to think, oh, the problem is the child, I'll fix the child. But there is some research to suggest that actually ensuring that you're getting your mental health needs met is enough. And that if you do that, your kids will be okay. And so again, it's not you being bougie or you being entitled. This is actually what it takes, I think, right now to show up in your kids' lives in the best way you can.
Thank you so much for this time, Professor Naomi Nichols, Canada Research Chair in Community Partnered Social Justice. The conversation's just beginning.
It was great to talk with you.
Very interesting. A great conversation. And it really shows us that we need to take care of ourselves. Yes, we're supposed to be taking care of our kids, but at the same time, we can't do that properly unless we take care of ourselves first. That apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And if we want to help our kids, we have to help ourselves. Step one is recognizing that we have anxiety, that we have stress. There are things we can do about it once we realize that. We also need to realize, as I mentioned several times, that you're not alone. You're not the only one who is going through this. Oh, far from it. So I'm going to end off this podcast the way I end off every podcast, but I really want you to take these words to heart. Until next time, thanks for joining me. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other.